Hi, welcome to the Dynamic Duel Podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Johnny DC.
And I'm his twin brother, Marvelous Joe.
And in this episode, we will be reviewing Season 3 of Titans, which just wrapped up on HBO Max. Seasons 1 and 2, of course, were on the DC Universe streaming app that no longer exists. Hopefully you've seen those.
And hopefully you've seen Season 3, because this is going to be a spoiler review, which we'll get to later on this episode.
Before that, we're going to break down the comic book movie news from the past week, including the fact that Lizard and Sandman have been confirmed for Spider-Man No Way Home. And we got some pre-production looks at Green Goblin for that movie as well, which is pretty cool. Bill Murray has apparently been cast in a mystery role in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Also cool. And lastly, Brendan Fraser has been cast as Firefly in the upcoming Batgirl film for HBO Max. As always, we list our segment times in our episode description, so feel free to check out the show notes if you want to skip ahead to a particular topic.
Remember, guys, that only the 4 most recent episodes of this podcast are available to the listening public. If you want access to over 200 episodes of archived content, including Nightwing vs. Daredevil,
our Teen Titans Go to the Movies review,
Red Hood vs. Punisher,
our Batman Begins review,
Titans vs. X-Men,
or our Batman Under the Red Hood review, be sure to subscribe to this podcast on Spotify or Patreon, both of which provide you with an RSS feed to use in your own podcast app.
On Patreon, you also get bonus content, including bonus episodes, access to our Discord server, blooper reels, and more. It's only $2 a month to subscribe on Spotify or Patreon, and you could do so by visiting dynamicduel.com/subscribe, which is linked in our show notes. We want to give a big shout out to our newest patron, Elijah Almquist. Thank you so much for signing up and supporting this show. You rock!
Yeah, you do!
But with that out of the way,
quick to the No Prize.
A No Prize is an award Marvel used to give out up until the 90s to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award we post on social media that Jonathan personally draws for those who we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week. Last week's question was in regards to the news that all of 2022's MCU film slate has been pushed back. So out of the 3 movies, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Thor: Love and Thunder, and Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, we wanted to know which one you were looking forward to the most. We only got 3 answers total, and 2 of them were kind of joke answers. So there are no honorable mentions for this particular episode. We're going to go ahead and jump straight into the No Prize winner. We do want to give a big thank you to Michael Haggerty and DC Joe for leaving your answers. Basically, one of them said that they were looking forward to watching The Dark Knight again the most, and the other one just went off on a rant bashing Brie Larson, which wasn't really what we were looking for, but ultimately they both said they were looking forward most to Doctor Strange. This week's No Prize goes to Harrison Fox, who also said,
"Hey guys, Harrison Fox here. The MCU movie that I'm most looking forward to is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. With all the Sony characters being brought in to Spider-Man No Way Home, I'm very curious to see what properties are going to show up in Doctor Strange 2. There's rumors of Patrick Stewart. We're going to possibly have Wanda doing her thing, so maybe there's going to be more X-Men. I don't know. But this is the chance to bring all of these universes together, and I'm very excited."
Yes, thank you, Harrison Fox. He also answered Doctor Strange along with the rest, and I really like his reasoning. Now, every rumor under the sun has been coming out in regards to what's going to happen in not only the Multiverse of Madness movie, but also Spider-Man No Way Home. And that's just the nature of these types of films where anything can happen regarding the multiverse, right? But a lot of the rumors that have been coming out for the Doctor Strange sequel have been really fascinating, such as the movie bridging the gap between the MCU and the Fox X-Men universe. We still don't know if any of that's true, but the potential of that happening makes my nipples hard.
Ew! I mean, I've heard everything from like Tom Cruise appearing as Tony Stark to like John Krasinski appearing as Steve Rogers. Just so many really fascinating rumors are coming out of this that it's kind of hard not to get excited, you know?
Even if like 1% of these rumors are true, it'll still be mind-blowing.
I suppose, but I sort of feel like a general waning of interest for the MCU as a whole. I mean, we only got 3 answers for this question of the week. Like, where are the Marvel fans at?
Hey, just because our Marvel fan listeners are a little bit more complacent than our DC fans doesn't mean that they don't exist and doesn't mean that interest in the MCU is waning. So just pump your brakes right there, pal. Marvel still reigns supreme.
I don't know. I feel like it's on the downslope, whereas DC is on the upslope. That's just my feeling. That's my gut.
Your feeling is stupid. And of course you were going to feel that.
All right.
But big thanks to Harrison Fox for leaving a message, and congrats for winning this week's No Prize. If you, the listener, want a shot at winning your own No Prize, stay tuned to later on this episode when we'll be asking another question of the week. But now that that's done,
on to the news.
All right, speaking of all the rumors and speculation regarding Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, this past week we found out some interesting news regarding the upcoming Spider-Man No Way Home film. The first bit came from Empire Magazine, who in one of their features revealed that both Thomas Hayden Church's Sandman and Rhys Ifans' Lizard are actually going to be in that movie. Now, this was heavily speculated by us when we saw the trailer and saw glimpses of both Sandman and Lizard there. So it's not too surprising, but it is nice to get this confirmation. So with Sandman confirmed, Lizard confirmed, and Dr. Octopus, Green Goblin, and Electro already on board, that's 5 out of the potential Sinister Six. We're still trying to figure out who that 6th villain could possibly be, if they are in fact going with the Sinister Six. But when you have that many villains in your Spider-Man movie, it's a safe bet that they are going the Sinister Six route.
My fingers are still crossed that it's going to be Kingpin. That would be cool.
That would be really cool. In addition to this Empire news, we also got a look at the suit that Green Goblin's going to wear in the movie.
Yeah, it's like his suit from the first movie with more satchels and pockets and stuff.
It's also heavily battle damaged. And with like the military straps and pockets and everything like that, it kind of looks like if the Spider-Man movie Green Goblin came from the Nightmare timeline from Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Yeah. I was surprised by how cool it looked, actually. People have always kind of made fun of the Green Goblin's costume, but I don't think anyone's going to be making fun of this.
We also saw some concept art of this suit, both with and without a mask. The mask version has this kind of like hoodie type hood over it, which I think is actually a pretty cool adaptation if they end up going with that concept art.
Yeah, it's purple, and he also wears goggles.
Right, yeah.
It's like very Mad Max, you know?
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to put it. Green Goblin meets Mad Max, which I think is pretty cool. There was also some leaked behind-the-scenes production photography that was taken. We see all 3 Spider-Man costumes, including Tom Holland's, Tobey Maguire's, and Andrew Garfield's, confirming the fact that all 3 Spider-Man are going to be in the movie.
Why doesn't Marvel just confirm their plans already? Damn it.
Because they're not officially releasing this news. This was done by leakers.
Sony has like the worst security ever. I bet Kevin Feige's so pissed off.
But it's really nice to get this information, and I really don't feel like it's spoiling anything. If I know that Green Goblin's going to be in the movie, which they already revealed in the last trailer with the pumpkin bomb, I'd like to know what he looks like, you know? As long as the leakers don't go too far, and I've mostly been avoiding spoilers, like I don't want to know any plot details or anything like that. As long as they keep it to like costume reveals and stuff like this, then I figure they're just doing the Lord's work. It's hard to believe that this Spider-Man movie comes out next month already in December.
You think we'll get another trailer this month?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But moving on from Spider-Man to Ant-Man, we learned this past week that Bill Murray has been cast in a mystery role in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. This was revealed by Murray himself during an interview with the French Dispatch when he was talking about how he recently did a Marvel movie with Peyton Reed, who's the director of Ant-Man and the Wasp, and how he normally wouldn't do a Marvel-type project, but he found it really interesting.
Yeah, he didn't want to say who he was playing, though, you know, which probably saved his life from, like, Kevin Feige's snipers.
Yeah, I mean, Sony will have leakers all day long, but when it comes to Marvel Studios films, Kevin Feige usually stays on top of that shit. So Bill Murray probably is being followed right now, but he seems like the type of guy who wouldn't care either.
I have no idea who he'll be playing.
I don't either. And while there's not much to this story, I thought it would be really cool to discuss so that we can bring it up as a question of the week. So here it is.
What role do you think Bill Murray is playing in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania?
Wrong answers only. Or right answers too. Just whatever answer you want. We don't know if it's going to be a small cameo role, like if he's playing himself, or if he's going to be playing some kind of larger role from the Marvel Comics universe. Who knows? But let us know what you guys think by recording your answer at dynamicduel.com by clicking on the red microphone button in the bottom right-hand corner, which will prompt you to leave us a voicemail. Your message can be up to 30 seconds long, and don't forget to leave your name in case we include you on the podcast. We'll pick our favorite answer and draw that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to social media. Be sure to answer before November 6th.
In DC news, Deadline got the scoop last week that Brendan Fraser was going to play the villain in HBO Max's upcoming Batgirl film. It was actually Entertainment Weekly who confirmed that he would be playing Firefly.
Yeah, we knew Firefly was going to be the villain in the Batgirl film, so when Deadline dropped the news, it was already highly suspected that Brendan Fraser would be playing that character.
Which kind of threw me for a loop when I first heard the news, because he is popularly, I would say, already Robot Man, another DC character in the Doom Patrol TV series, also on HBO Max. Now, we know that DC is really trying to play up this whole multiverse thing, but when you have one actor playing multiple roles, it could get kind of confusing.
Yeah, especially with an actor as kind of like iconic as Brendan Fraser. There's no one really else like him. He has a unique voice, he has a unique look. I've seen him be quite the chameleon in his previous work. You look at a movie like Bedazzled, and even in just that movie, how many different types of roles he played. So I'm not too concerned about this. I do like him as an actor, and I really hope that this is like his big comeback in a starring role.
Yeah, for sure. Firefly is a pretty minor Batman villain, so I think there's a lot he could do with the role, and it's not going to like upset too many fans because the character of Firefly...
It's just a guy with a flamethrower, right?
Yeah, he's essentially a heat wave with wings. The character was actually interpreted pretty well in the video game Batman Arkham Knight. In fact, I would say like the Vulture from the first Spider-Man MCU film probably took a lot of inspiration from the way they depicted Firefly in that video game.
If Brendan Fraser is even half as cool as Michael Keaton's Vulture was in Spider-Man Homecoming, then I'm actually really looking forward to this.
I think the potential is there for sure.
Has Brendan Fraser ever played a villain before that you could think of?
Not quite.
He was kind of a douche in Crash, if I remember correctly, but everyone in that movie was kind of a douche.
Oh, I totally forgot he was in that film. I think that was like the last film I saw him in.
It'll be weird to see him play a villain, but I think he could totally pull it off.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's just a great actor. This isn't the only film he starred in recently. I guess he's going to be in Darren Aronofsky's Whale film, like later next year. So yeah, his star is definitely rising again, I would say. And I'm looking forward to this Batgirl movie. We don't have an official release date for the film yet, but it's either going to come out sometime next year or the year after. But I think that does it for the news. We want to give a quick shout out to HBO Max for sponsoring this episode. Bruce Wayne may appear to be a wealthy playboy, but beneath his facade, his true identity is that of the Batman, waging an endless war against crime. Join the Caped Crusader in Batman, The Audio Adventures, the first scripted audio original featuring Batman and his villainous rogues gallery in a world premiere story of life and death in Gotham City, debuting exclusively on HBO Max. Starring Jeffrey Wright as Batman and a who's who of incredible Saturday Night Live alums, this rollicking adventure, told across 10 episodes, is written and directed by Emmy winner Dennis McNicholas, includes devilishly delightful original music by Doug Bossy, and performances by Rosario Dawson, John Leguizamo, Chris Parnell, Melissa Villaseñor, Seth Meyers, Jason Sudeikis, Brooke Shields, Fred Armisen, and many, many more. Go to hbomax.com/Batman Audio Adventures for more, and stream Batman The Audio Adventures only on HBO Max.
Thanks again to HBO Max. Now let's get on to the main event of this episode, where we review the latest season of the HBO Max television series, Titans.
Is a television series focused on the Teen Titans and Titans characters from DC Comics. The show was created by Jeff Johns, the comic book writer and producer on other DC shows like Doom Patrol and Stargirl, Greg Berlanti, the man behind the Arrowverse and basically all of DC television, and Akiva Goldsman, the writer of Batman and Robin, but also the winner of Best Screenplay for A Beautiful Mind. Titans debuted in 2018 as the flagship show for DC's new streaming app, DC Universe, which is now a comic-only product. As of Season 3, Titans is an HBO Max exclusive series, meaning it now has access to a much broader audience, which is awesome. We didn't review Seasons 1 and 2 on this podcast because we figured DC Universe subscription was low and we weren't sure how many of you were actually watching the show. Because of the show's new home on HBO Max, though, many more of you may be watching the series for the first time. To which I'd like to somewhat apologize for Seasons 1 and 2. Like, they weren't bad. I mean, they have their moments for sure, but overall, I'd admit that the series has an R-rated, slightly better than CW quality. If you're having trouble making it through the first 2 seasons, I have to say season 3 was much better. If you haven't seen season 3 of Titans yet, here's your spoiler warning. Stop listening now, watch the season, then come back and listen to us break it down.
Yeah, I actually didn't watch seasons 1 or 2 because I am not a masochist. I'm sure they're fine. I don't want to be too harsh to something that I haven't seen. But jumping aboard season 3, I did find myself a little bit lost at times, but I think the show did a good job of referencing clearly the events of the past seasons. Those previously on Titans segments were really helpful to me.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, well, I'm glad you weren't completely lost.
Plus, I know the characters generally and their stories from your backgrounds on them in our dual episodes. This season was kind of a mashup between the Death in the Family story, the Red Hood story, Batman No Man's Land, with a dash of Batman Begins. The whole thing is fairly derivative.
You could say that, but the stories have also never been told from the point of view of the Titans characters, which kind of makes it fresh and cool and exciting. The show may come as a big surprise to those who are only familiar with the characters in their cartoon form. The show is dark and violent and laced with profanity. It very much takes a gritty, realistic take on the characters in a way that should be familiar to fans of the DCEU. It's very much more of a Snyder-esque approach to the characters than perhaps a more accessible CW version.
Yeah, kind of similar to Doom Patrol in its foul-mouthedness. Definitely a different show from Doom Patrol in that Doom Patrol doesn't actually feel CW-y. It feels more like a film, whereas Titans overall does feel a little bit more CW-y in that, it's very angsty, a little bit low budget. A lot of the dialogue is tremendously overwritten in this detached way that kind of makes none of the characters feel real. I would say that Doom Patrol doesn't have those same issues.
No, yeah, of all of the shows that came out of the DC universe, Doom Patrol is definitely the best one. It's funny and dark, not just dark like Teen Titans is, although it has its moments of humor. Now, the comic book definitely tackled dark themes on occasion, but if you're a fan of the characters from the comics, the show also offers plenty of surprises, though not all of them are always fun surprises. The show has been defined for me, personally, by its strange choices. There's at least one moment in almost every episode where I'm like, what the fuck?
And not in a Doom Patrol way.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. I think because the central character of the series is Nightwing, more often than not, the what the fuck moments come from the show's psychopathic take on Batman and his sadistic, abusive training. It's always felt like an unnecessary take on the character, and yet it's been a cornerstone of the show since its first season, setting this uncomfortable and often brutal tone for the series at times.
Yeah, this Batman will fucking kill. He killed the Joker in this series.
Yeah, in this season, not only did we have Batman kill, but he abandoned Gotham and he tried to kill himself. These are things Batman would never, ever do. But it wasn't just him. There were a lot of other WTF moments in this season. Dick Grayson decapitates a wolf. Barbara Gordon steals jewelry. Who thinks any of these ideas were good?
People who maybe care less about the characters and more about the dark, gritty vibe that the show gives off. I would say that while I did enjoy the season, my impression of the show is largely that it's style over substance.
That's probably fair, though I would say that the show does have substance, because for every couple of mistakes that it makes, it manages to hit some really strong, nearly perfect emotional episodes that redeem the show, in my opinion. In the first season, it was the Hank and Don episode. In season 2, it was Aqualad and the Jericho episodes. And in this season, it was the Hank and Dove, Lazarus, and Souls episodes. The show, without a doubt, keeps getting better season by season.
I think the best thing I have to say about the show is that I was actually ambivalent about watching it because I thought I was going to get bored. But something major happened at least once every episode, which is not something you can even say about the Netflix shows. Sometimes you'd run into an episode of Daredevil or Jessica Jones or something where almost nothing happens. But in Titans, I never felt like the story was treading water.
And I think that's something very specific to this season. I don't think you could say the same thing about episodes prior to season 3. But yeah, I would agree. The pacing of this season was really, really good.
It made it a quick binge, which I like.
Yeah, for sure. Totally bingeable this season. It was great. Now, whereas the first season was about overcoming your demons, literally, the main bad guy was Trigon, The second season was about taking responsibility for past mistakes, and season 3 was about death and rebirth. One of the great things about this show, season to season, is that you feel like the stakes are real. Like no character, not even Nightwing apparently, is safe from death. You know, from Aqualad and Donna Troy in last season to Joker and Hawk and Tim Drake in this one, you never know how or when a character will die. And in this season, how or when a character would be reborn.
Yeah, there was kind of a lot of resurrection in this. Like a Lazarus Pit style resurrection makes sense to me, but the whole, crossing the bridge from the afterlife kind of thing, I thought was a little bit of a cop-out, even though I did really enjoy that episode.
Yeah, that was the Souls episode. I agree. A little bit of a cop-out.
It makes it seem like anyone can just come back from the dead if they just try hard enough, you know?
If they can make it past the Bridge of Wraiths, for sure. Or ghouls. Yeah, he called them ghouls.
Yeah.
And I mean, with certain characters, like I think we all knew Jason Todd would come back from the dead as Red Hood, but imagine how surprising and interesting that would have been if you went into the show fresh with no knowledge of the comic characters at all, you know? I do often try to watch something as a non-fan, but it's kind of a challenge. Like I debate with myself sometimes whether critiquing comic book media as a comic book fan is fair or kind of cheating. Like, I've been disappointed by a lot of movies and TV shows simply because of the expectations I have of the characters and stories going into it. I feel like Titans is one of those shows where it's better if you go into it fresh. Like, Titans isn't necessarily made for the fans, but for people newly introduced to these characters.
I would definitely agree with that. I think fans largely are going to be scratching their head at a lot of the decisions that are made within the show, but people who come in who just like superheroes probably have a better time.
Right. And that's sort of what makes shows like this difficult to rate, you know? There are just so many characters with so many arcs that are so much more rushed than they are in the comics, like Jason Todd's arc. And I feel like it's sometimes impossible to not piss off fans of certain characters with shows like these. You mentioned that the show looked fairly cheap earlier, and I do think that some fan ire can also come from the show's budget. Like, I'm sure Beast Boy fans are still wondering why he can only turn into a tiger in the show, you know?
Well, he turned into a bat.
For like 5 seconds. The show looks pretty cheap at times. I think a lot of it has to do with the cinematography. It's just at such a high contrast. It just hides all of the details. And there are other times where I just cringed every time they were driving because you could see the screens outside the car windows.
Yeah, at times the background screens were freezing at some point. They were stuttering because they couldn't load quick enough.
Exactly. I noticed that too. That's embarrassing.
I think the lack of a budget affects less of the special effects because I think those are pretty fine for the type of show that this is. I think it affects the story more than anything else.
For sure.
Like how they went with this whole no man's land scenario here, and yet we barely got to see any of Gotham City. That was kind of bullshit.
There's a lot of telling and not showing in this season.
Exactly.
A better show would have actually shown the National Guard pull up and start interacting with Gotham citizens, right?
Right. They're this resistance, we're forming this resistance and it's taking over. But you never see any of that. The streets are always empty.
Right. But also as well as story, the budget I think also affects the sets. Wayne Manor was so obviously the same location as Doom Manor from the Doom Patrol series.
Yes.
They barely changed the kitchen decor.
Yeah, that was the same kitchen. I thought that was hilarious.
And as cool as the Batcave looked in this show with its holographic T-Rex and giant penny, I'm pretty sure the Batcomputer was repurposed from last season's Titans Tower.
Okay.
So actually, now that I think about it, that may make sense story-wise since Bruce financed the tower. I feel like the one area where the show's not skimpy on, budget-wise, is costumes, though, because those things are pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Nightwing's suit looks like it's ready for film, I think. I thought I'd hate Starfire's costume from early photos, but it looked great on screen. Yeah. And Hawk and Dove's costumes look so much better than they ever did in the comics.
I liked Red Hood's costume too. I think they did a pretty good job considering that the actor who plays Jason Todd doesn't seem very tough or threatening. He's a 5'3" guy in this Red Hood costume. So it almost looks like Red Hood light, but I think the quality is still there.
The Red Hood has always had a pretty cool look in the comics, and I'd say they pretty much nailed it here, except for, the helmet, which wasn't terrible by any means, but it was a little bobbleheady and cheap looking with a weird nose point. But that could have just been that the actor Kieran Walters didn't quite fill out the suit, like you mentioned.
Another thing that the show has going for it, I think, I don't know how much of a plus this is for most fans, but the cast is extremely attractive. It's like
the most attractive cast on television, I would argue.
Yeah, they may not be all the best actors, but they are definitely the best looking. They're all just a bunch of models that you could watch do pretty much anything because they're just such beautiful people.
Sometimes I kind of feel like people might be turned off by this show because they all look like porn stars in a way. But I agree. They're all very attractive.
And while that may not make for the best quality television, it does make for easy viewing.
And I would argue they're all really good in their roles. Even Kieran Walters, who played Red Hood, I thought he did a lot better this season than he had in the past. But let's get more into that in our character breakdown. Starting with Nightwing. So Dick Grayson / Nightwing was played by Brenton Thwaites, who in my opinion is as perfect for the role of Dick Grayson as Gal Gadot is for Wonder Woman or Hugh Jackman for Wolverine.
He's the best thing about this show. It's almost like he's in a better show.
Yeah, totally. He just acts circles around most of the rest of the cast. The guy is movie star quality, and I think he nails the presence, the fight choreography, the inner conflict, and even humor of the character as it's presented in this show. If they ever made a Titans movie, I'd still want him for the leading role.
I would love for him to get his own solo movie.
That would be really cool. Yeah, I think when he first signed up for the role, the project was actually being considered as a movie. I think Chris McKay's Nightwing movie specifically. Brenton Thwaites has said that he believed he would get a movie part when he got the role. And he's playing it like a movie part, for sure.
Yeah, it makes you kind of wish that the show was better just to accommodate his performance.
I think it's getting better, and that makes me proud for Brenton Thwaites and his performance. I think he's helping to elevate it for sure. Now, Dick first appeared in his Nightwing costume in the last episode of Season 2, so we didn't get to see it in action that much. It was so cool to see him use smoke bombs and his electric eskrima sticks in this season. They were magnetic, so they'd come back to him. Like, Nightwing probably has the best costume in all of comic books, so it's so cool to see it done justice on screen.
It was really impressive visually when he'd swing them around, and because they had those electrified tips at the end, you just see these little blue lights swirling as he swung them. It was a pretty cool effect.
Yeah, that was like a genius design choice.
And actually, like Red Hood, he had little red lights at the tips of his guns. So when they were going at it, like in the forest, I thought that was a really cool scene with their like light up weapons.
Oh yeah, in the dark?
Yeah.
That was cool. Now, the first episode of the season, Nightwing is charged by Bruce Wayne with being a better Batman than he was, and that sets up his arc for the season. Batman was a failed father figure to many, including Dick, and the scenario set up by the show is whether he can keep his Titans family together and lead them out of the hell that Scarecrow created in Gotham. But because of how neurotic this version of Batman is, it's not a challenge for Dick to be a more stable leader. His main conflicts come from his relationships with others who were also quote-unquote raised by Batman, both Jason Todd and Barbara Gordon. When Jason is revealed to be the Red Hood and goes so far as to kill and betray members of the Titans, in the end, despite Jason's mistakes, like a good father, Nightwing forgave Red Hood and set him on a course for redemption, something Bruce Wayne admitted in the final episode that he may not have been capable of doing earlier. When it comes to his relationship with Barbara, it's conflicted on multiple levels, from business relations to bedroom relations. Barbara's been abused by Gotham and its villains, and like Dick, doesn't have the fondest memories of working with Batman, even going so far as to repeat the notorious line Dick said in Season 1, "Fuck Batman." And it's kind of implied that some of Dick's ire for Bruce comes from Barbara and her rebellious nature. Speaking of Barbara Gordon, she was played by Savannah Welch. This version of Barbara has already retired from the Batgirl mantle after being shot by the Joker and losing her leg. Savannah Welch was hit by a car in 2016, which resulted in her right leg needing to be amputated. In the comics, of course, Barbara Gordon was paralyzed after being shot by the Joker, making her probably the most well-known disabled superhero. And I have to give major kudos to the showrunners here for casting an actress as talented as Savannah, someone with an actual disability, rather than getting any old actress to pretend to move around in a wheelchair. Savannah made a great Barbara Gordon, and even though the show is leaving Gotham City for Season 4, I hope Savannah comes back as the character.
I actually didn't like Barbara Gordon in this series.
What?
I don't think she was the greatest actress. A lot of her line delivery was a little bit flat and cold, kind of devoid of the emotion given by the other actors. And yes, she's kind of supposed to be this kind of cold person in the series.
Yeah, dude, she's seen some shit.
But I didn't buy her even in her, like, emotional scenes.
What?
I also think the script didn't do her any favors. Like, basically, she just was there to provide, like, the police perspective of everything that's going on. But they kind of bounced her all over the place. So she really didn't have quite a prominent impact on the proceedings. There was the moment where I thought she was going to access Oracle, which in this show was a computer program. And I thought that was pretty cool because I thought she'd help out the Titans that way. But they botched that as soon as they introduced it. And the whole thing where she was like a jewel thief, like Selena Kyle.
Yeah, the jewel thief thing was really weird. It did feel like they were trying to make her a little bit more like Catwoman to Nightwing's Batman. I did not like that. I thought that was a horrible decision that they made on behalf of the character. But, you know, the GCPD has always played a major part in Batman stories. And I thought it was nice that the showrunners were able to find a way to make a younger character of Titan's age the surrogate for what went on in the story from the police department's perspective. I thought it was really cool that Barbara followed in her father's footsteps to become the police commissioner of Gotham City. One of the themes of this show is about legacy and stepping into your father's footsteps. Barbara's arc is really about letting go and trusting her old ally, Dick Grayson. Barbara has this fierce dedication to protecting Gotham, and because she hung up the cape, she feels that Gotham doesn't need superheroes to ward off crime. But she learns that even with Batman gone, Gotham's dire villains require dire measures, including costumed vigilantes and even the highly intrusive and illegal artificial intelligence, Oracle, which you mentioned earlier, and really is Brother Eye from the comics. Oracle, of course, was Barbara Gordon's alias in the comics when she was disabled and sort of acted as the man in the chair for the superhero community. I'm not sure why they didn't just call it Brother Eye, because Oracle is something very different. I don't know where they'll take that in the future.
Well, they destroyed it in this one, so it might come back as Brother Eye.
Yeah, maybe.
How come we never got to see Barbara Gordon in her Batgirl outfit? Like, they just made references to it without actually showing it. That was kind of a disappointment.
Probably for the same reason that we didn't see Batman in his Batsuit. They just didn't make it because they're cheap. I don't know. Moving on to Red Hood. Jason Todd / Red Hood was played by Kieran Walters. I admit I've never liked him in this role, like all the way back to season 1 when he was first introduced. He's way too annoying and emotional and kind of just poorly written. But the character was done much more justice in this season, despite the rush to get him into the Red Hood mantle. Kieran Walters plays angry rage much better than whiny crybaby, and I do hope we get to see him again in future seasons, which was something I didn't think I'd say after the previous 2.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what to make of him in the beginning. I thought he turned out fine, though. I legitimately don't buy him as a physical threat, but I think as an actor expressing the emotional beats that he had to go through in this story, I thought he did just fine.
We have to remember that he started off the show as Robin, so his frame and physicality kind of stems from there. He didn't look bad as Robin, but I agree, like I said earlier, he doesn't quite fill out the Red Hood suit.
Like, I was almost laughing my ass off when he confronted that one drug dealer who was sitting on his car, and then he got his ass beat. I was like, that's pretty much what would happen in real life.
Maybe. But in, previous seasons, you've seen him take out, entire rooms full of guys. And he sold it, I thought. Now, I feel like while Nightwing was the protagonist of the series, this season's themes revolved around the Red Hood. Themes of fear, sibling rivalry, redemption. Red Hood's story encompassed all of them. Jason was still traumatized by his experience with Deathstroke from last season, where he was dropped off of a skyscraper without any tools or gadgets to save himself. That fear last season turned into a fear of abandonment and rejection by his new Titans family. And ultimately, he left the team to return to Gotham, where he became afraid that his trauma would cause Bruce to abandon him too and make him stop being Robin. And that's pretty much what happened. So Jason turned to Scarecrow to conquer his fear.
And I think that totally makes sense as a plot point. If you're burdened by your fear, it made sense that he would go to Scarecrow in an attempt to chemically create a sort of courage serum that's like the opposite of Scarecrow's natural fear toxin.
Yeah, it was like an anti-fear toxin, right?
Yeah. And the way they parlayed that anti-fear toxin into No Man's Land totally made sense, I thought.
Yeah, that was well done. I thought the way that they introduced Scarecrow to Red Hood through Leslie Tompkins was also really well done. In the comics, she was a doctor who helped raise Bruce Wayne when he was a young boy. If Alfred was his surrogate father, then Leslie Tompkins was like his surrogate mother. Although that probably wasn't the case in this show. Now, Jason's also been pretty envious of Dick throughout the whole series. Dick is sort of like Bruce's favorite son. And that arc came to a head in this season, where we see the two of them fight and eventually grow to respect one another. They fight multiple times, like in the forest and in Gotham. Really cool fight scenes. I think some of the best fights of the season. And they should be, because that's a badass fight, Nightwing versus Red Hood. I like that. Moving on to Starfire, Coriander/Starfire was played by Anna Diop, who I love in this role. She's just an incredible actress, probably the best in the series. Her expressions are so genuine, and she has this great swagger about her, but is also heartfelt.
Yeah, I think she did a solid job. I don't think her story arc was that great, but I think she's definitely great in the role.
No, her arc this season was kind of weird. She kept having these blackout moments where she'd sleepwalk across Gotham and see weird visions. I thought these spells would end when she saved her sister Blackfire, and we learned that they have some like weird sibling ESP. But when those spells continued, I was pretty confused. I guess the visions wanted her to see that Blackfire was the true heir to the Tamaranian throne, but because we never learned what caused the visions or why they'd show her specific things, it all seemed like really cheap storytelling. I feel like the show at the end of the season was trying to imply that she was pregnant and that her new power came from the child within her womb, but that was never clarified.
How did you make the leap to pregnancy? Because I didn't get that at all.
The baby, actually. The fact that she was having visions of a baby and that it was established that she was born without powers, but that members of her lineage could gain powers. I don't know. I just put two and two together. Also, the fact that Dick's daughter in his vision of his daughter was black, I figured they were trying to set something up.
I mean, I guess.
Otherwise, where did her powers come from?
That's a good question. There's like a lot that was unexplained about Starfire's arc this entire season. Where the visions came from, where her new powers came from, what her new powers were, why she became like homicidal when she was experiencing her visions, just like attacking anybody who would talk to her. None of that made sense.
I think the writers were trying to make it seem like Raven was involved in some way, just to make her presence felt a little bit throughout the season, because she didn't appear until the very end. Something similar happened last season, where all these different characters were having these different visions, and it turned out that Raven was subconsciously giving those visions to them.
Okay.
But I don't think that was the case here.
Nightwing himself had a few scenes where he was experiencing visions, even outside the time he was in the Lazarus Pit. Like he'd see himself as a young boy.
Yeah, that's been a staple from season 1.
Okay.
I guess you wouldn't have the whole Starfire is pregnant angle unless you knew that Starfire and Dick boned in season 1.
Oh, I knew that. I figured. I mean, that's what they do in the comics.
Okay. Yeah. Regarding Starfire's appearance, they've really struggled with the character's look throughout this series, like intentionally making her look like a prostitute in the first season, possibly as some kind of commentary on her costume in the comics. And in the second season, she looked fashionable, but didn't really have a superhero outfit. In this season, she finally donned something that resembled a costume with an alien slant. It's not a perfect interpretation of her comics look, but I actually liked it with its ornate purple and gold patterns and iconic green gemstones.
Yeah, I thought it looked really good. I'm surprised that they never nailed it before because it seemed so easy once you actually see it.
And I thought it paired well with her sister Blackfire's costume in the show.
Yeah.
Speaking of Blackfire, she was played very well by Damaris Lewis. I thought she pulled off the role and lines perfectly, and I think some of them were probably a challenge to get across.
Yeah, I thought she was going to be annoying from the first time I saw her, but she turned into quite the interesting character, I think. She was very much like the antithesis of a typical DC character in that she was all shades of gray. Nothing about her was black and white.
Yeah, you could say that. I mean, I also wasn't looking forward to Starfire's arc with Blackfire because I didn't think the setup for this story from season 2 was all that great. Like, Blackfire would shoot down, like, a purple piece of diarrhea from the sky somehow, and that would crawl into people's ears and possess them to do her bidding. So we didn't see much of the actual character last season, just like her avatars. But that whole angle was largely ignored this season, as we find out that she was captured by the government off-screen before the season even started. And she reaches out to her sister to save her via the ESP thing. She wasn't as villainous as I thought she'd be, and I thought she actually made a great addition to the Titans team. I liked how her relationship with her sister grew, and I'll for sure miss her if she doesn't come back for future seasons. It seems like they may be setting the show up for an off-world field trip to Tamaran, so I'm guessing we'll see Blackfire again. She had an interesting perspective as an outcast with a dark side, and it was one that she shared with Superboy surprisingly well.
Yeah, Superboy got pretty dark in some spots, and I don't know if that's like shades of things to come, but it makes sense considering that he's not just a clone of Superman, but also a clone of Lex Luthor.
Right. Superboy was played by Joshua Orpin, who I thought gave a much better performance this season than he did in the last one. Superboy was newly born last season, so he didn't know much about the world, which is funny in some parts, but he also kind of came across as just like ditzy and easily manipulated at times. And you're right, this season, they ditched the ditzy angle and really played up the fact that he was half Lex Luthor, making him the resident tech whiz of the group, which was surprising, but kind of made sense if you thought about it. He also had much better motivations this time around, which were largely absent last season since he mostly just did what others told him to. This time he had motivations like love and even greed, like choosing to destroy Blackfire's ship was hardcore, and also a great call out to the Lex Luthor side of him once again. I can't wait to see what they're going to do with the character going forward. I imagine he's going to get a lot more villainous in seasons to come.
Well, hopefully Crypto doesn't take that villainous turn too.
No,
I liked Crypto.
Never. Yeah, he's cool. I definitely think Joshua Orpin looks the part of Superboy, like to a T. If he wasn't Superboy, he probably could have made a strong bid to play Superman when he was a little bit older. Moving on to Gar Logan / Beast Boy, he was played by Ryan Potter, who, like many members of the cast, is just great in the role. Ryan Potter actively campaigned to play Tim Drake in the DCEU for a time, so it was cool to see him cast in a DC role when the show was announced. Ryan is highly trained in martial arts, and it totally shows based on his fight choreography. He just makes it look way more effortless than any of the other cast members.
Yeah, he's definitely the most physical of the group.
But because of that, sometimes I feel like they downplay his powers to play upon his strength as a martial artist. I wish we'd see him transform into all kinds of animals in the show, not just a tiger, but so far, that's all he's mostly been. He's been a snake once, and he's been a bat now once.
I thought one of his best moments was when he kind of combined the martial arts with the transformation when he was scratching people with his tiger claws, and he was green colored.
Yeah, that was cool. You probably noticed that he's not all green all the time.
Right.
I'm hoping at some point in the show, they make him permanently green. We'll see. Maybe when he gets mastery over his transformation or something like that. Nagar is probably the most wholesome character on this series. He's all about family and sticking together, which isn't surprising considering the character's set up as a member of the Doom Patrol from Season 1, where his philosophy that outcasts need to look out for one another was spelled out pretty clearly. I sort of feel like the showrunners don't always know what to do with the character because I think they can't put him in too many action scenes. So in this season, Gar was left to wish he could transform into other animals, and he learned more about the Lazarus Pit on the side. And I guess he also looked for Jason Todd on the side as well.
He's just always there for moral support.
He is a good side character. He's there when you need him, for sure. They always really played up his relationship with Raven in previous seasons, but again, Raven wasn't really in this season that much, so they couldn't do that. Moving on to Hawk, Alan Richson plays Hank Hall / Hawk. He's the team's resident asshole, and the actor plays that well, but that makes sense for the character if you're familiar with his backstory from the comic. Hawk's arc is really about finding what he wants. He wants to be sober, he wants Dawn, he wants Jason Todd, he wants to live. That's ultimately taken from him, and in the afterlife, he overcomes his selfishness and sacrifices his life to help Donna and Tim. You can't really appreciate how heartwarming it is to see him with his brother Don unless you've seen Season 1. But it was brilliant writing, and it makes me happy for the character, despite him being dead.
Yeah, he's going to be a superhero forever with his brother fighting crime in limbo or something. I think that's pretty touching, even though I had no context. Again, there was the whole kind of flashback in the previously on, so I'm not getting the full brunt of it, but I think I got enough of the gist.
Cool. Moving on to Dove, Minka Kelly plays Dawn Granger / Dove. She's a pacifist in the comics. And while Dove in this show is actually pretty violent, she's also the most level-headed and a great foil for Hawk. Their relationship has been off and on again throughout the show, but it's always been clear how much they care for one another. So having Dawn be the one that pulled the trigger for Hank's death was unbelievably heartbreaking, especially considering Superboy was so close to saving him.
Yeah, that was crazy. I do have to say, like, the first half of this season I thought was really good. It completely fell apart in the second half, but these first few episodes were brilliant.
I sort of feel like Hawk and Dove were written off the show this season, which is a shame. But I also don't hate the way that their stories ended. And, I wouldn't hate it if Dove showed up for a cameo appearance if the team traveled to Europe or something. But I'm guessing she won't be a mainstay of the show anymore.
Yeah, I definitely like to see more Minka Kelly, for sure, in the show.
I guess they could turn Hawk into a villain extant, like in the comics. I guess that's plausible, but I'd be surprised. Moving on to Donna Troy. Connor Leslie plays Donna Troy. Again, perfect casting, in my opinion. She's another cast member that's like movie star level, I think. And I could totally see her play Gal Gadot's younger sister. We didn't get to see much of her this season, but I'm just grateful she came back at all, considering she died in season 2. Though also the way she died in season 2 was really fucking dumb, so They better have brought her back. Otherwise, I would have been so pissed.
It seemed like she just got electrocuted.
Yes! She, stopped an electrical tower from falling on Dove, and then she got zapped and just, fell over. It was like, what? Just randomly. After they defeated the villain. It was weird.
But then later on in this season, she absorbed a lot of lightning from the sky, so I don't understand that.
That may have been commentary in saying that, yeah, it was very dumb the way we killed her last season. Because I know the actress Connor Leslie herself was complaining about how she died.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Now, Donna's brief appearance didn't lend itself to much of an arc, but it was really about accepting her role as a leader and defender of the people. We'll see where that takes her in subsequent seasons. Moving on to Raven, who is played by Tegan Croft. She's the youngest cast member. Really the only one that's a teen, which is probably one of the reasons the show isn't called Teen Titans. She's not bad in the role, and I think she's definitely improving as an actress. Like Donna Troy, again, Raven is barely in the season, but she seems to be much more in control of her powers, perhaps due to her time training on Themyscira. I'm guessing she was left out until the very end because she's so overpowered that she could have stopped Red Hood and Scarecrow a lot more easily than the others. Moving on to Tim Drake, newcomer Jay Licurgo made his debut as Tim Drake this season. Tim Drake is my favorite Robin, so it was cool to see him introduced in this show. He didn't don the Robin outfit, but this show likes to play the long game. They didn't even give Dick Grayson the name Nightwing until this season, and they've been teasing it since season 1. Tim is definitely the smartest Robin, and him figuring out Nightwing's and Batman's secret identities is straight from the comics, as is his insistence that he was meant to be the next Robin. So that was cool to see here.
I don't know, I really liked Tim at the beginning of the season, but toward the end, he was just so whiny and so wanting to be part of the group, and yet, he couldn't do shit. You see him kick some police officer guy, and they're like, where'd you learn that? And he's like, YouTube. And I'm like, this fool isn't ready for prime time, and yet, he's so insistent that, he's gonna be a hero and everything like that. I'm like, he doesn't know shit.
Dude, Tim Drake's greatest strength has always been his analytical and deductive mind. I'm glad that they played up on that here. Again, they're playing the long game. Let him build into his training and superhero mantle.
Does Nightwing get to dictate whether or not he becomes the next Robin, or is that Batman's call?
I don't know. It's still unclear as to whether Batman is retired by the end of the season. Maybe he becomes Drake instead of Robin. Who knows? We'll see. Lastly, I want to touch on Scarecrow, who is played by Vincent Kartheiser of Mad Men fame. He's a great actor.
I found Scarecrow to be pretty inconsistent through this whole season. Most of the characters in the show are inconsistent and wishy-washy, who flip-flop motivations from episode to episode, but I couldn't figure out what Scarecrow was trying to do. He started out trying to take over crime in Gotham City via the Red Hood. Then he starts peddling this anti-fear drug. Then he's going to put the drug into the water supply. Then he creates these bombs of the fear toxin. It was just all over the place. It was so bizarre.
Well, his plans changed halfway through the season because remember the Titans destroyed his drug supply at Mr. Freeze's ice cream factory, right? So after that, he was no longer trying to get rich and make the other mobsters rich. He was just trying to cause chaos and destroy Gotham.
Okay, but then explain the inconsistency with him killing. He killed the demolitions guy and he killed his mom, but he couldn't kill the pizza guy, which he tried to do.
But he did kill the pizza guy. It wasn't about killing the pizza guy. It was about making him afraid, I think. I don't fucking know.
No, because Batman's whole analysis of Scarecrow was that he wasn't proactive.
Yeah, and that he always had other people do his dirty work for him.
Right. And so when Scarecrow tried to do something on his own and kill the pizza delivery guy, he found out that he couldn't. It wasn't about instilling fear. He was trying to do something proactive and found that he couldn't, even though you saw him earlier kill his mom and the demolitions guy. I thought he was done brilliantly in the first half of the season when he was like a Hannibal Lecter type guy in the way that he manipulated Red Hood. But by the end, when he was just like being a freaking weirdo, I think the show just completely lost everything cool about the character. He didn't even wear the Scarecrow mask once, which I thought he would.
That was a major disappointment.
Especially because it was all designed and everything. You saw the mask. He just never put it on.
And especially because he actually did go out into the city during the whole fear gas bombs thing with a gas mask. So why not have that gas mask be the Scarecrow mask?
Exactly.
There were elements that I really liked about this version of Scarecrow, but yeah, a lot of them that I also didn't like. I wonder if they were going for like a Chucky type look when he like sliced his face up with the razor. That was weird. Now that I think about it, you're probably right. Scarecrow was very inconsistent. His plans, plural, and motivations didn't quite work together, but let's talk a little bit more of that in our plot breakdown. All right, in episode 1, titled Barbara Gordon, after learning the Joker killed Jason, Dick returns to Gotham City. He discovers Jason had been working with chemistry equipment, which was used to create an unidentified drug. Reuniting with Bruce and Police Commissioner Barbara Gordon, Dick begins to question Bruce's mental state over losing Jason. His suspicions are confirmed when he finds out that the Joker was murdered by Bruce, who departs after tasking Dick with protecting Gotham. The news of Jason's death also reaches Tim Drake, a young Gotham resident who idolizes Batman. Meanwhile, the Titans team of Corey, Gar, and Connor continue to fight crime in San Francisco. Corey begins to experience hallucinations that result in her blacking out.
Now, I think the opening action sequence for the Titans team on the show was pretty top-notch. Like, you got to see them all use their powers. You got to see, Nightwing for the first time, apparently. They're all kicking ass. It was really fun.
Yeah, and they were going up against frickin' Gizmo. That's cool.
I don't even know who that guy is.
What? He's a member of the Fearsome Five. I've never seen him before in live action. It was kind of fun to see him there.
It was really interesting to see the Joker. I mean, it was just a silhouette, but he looked pretty good.
Yeah, that whole scene was pretty creepy, which it should be. I actually really liked that. The smile on that cop's face, ugh, that was disturbing.
Now, what did you think of the fact that Bruce killed the Joker?
I am not a fan. Like, I'm not a fan of any aspect of Batman in this show. I think they completely botched the character. It's kind of embarrassing, honestly.
He kind of comes across as like a deranged, bizarro Adam West version of the character.
I felt the same way. Like, they cast Ian Glenn to be sort of like an Adam West type version or lookalike of the character. I think it's completely miscast. I think it's completely wrong for the character.
I'm glad that we actually got to see a version of Batman who did kill the Joker, because we've been talking about that for a few weeks now. And to see it actually happen and to see how it affected him, like Bruce wanted to like commit suicide. And then after that, he kind of came to terms with it and was fine. I think that's what would happen in the comics if he actually did that. And it was good to see that kind of play out in this version of the character. And even when you look at stories like Under the Red Hood, when Jason Todd was furious with Batman for not killing the Joker after he had been killed by the Clown Prince of Crime, you see all the shit that he stirs up because of that. And in this version, you actually see Jason Todd ask him, "Did you kill the Joker because of what he did to me?" Batman says yes. And it was kind of like this tender moment that I thought was truly fascinating. Like just an alternate take of what it could be if DC characters weren't so black and white.
Nah, I still don't like it. In episode 2, titled Red Hood, to help Dick protect Gotham, Corey, Gar, Connor, and Don arrive at the team's new base in Wayne Manor. Hank also joins, despite tensions between him and Don. In Bruce's absence, a mysterious figure extorts Gotham's mob bosses into becoming their enforcer. When the figure has individuals wearing red hoods to perform criminal acts, Barbara informs Dick that the incarcerated Jonathan Crane has been serving as a police consultant.
As a profiler.
Right. Through Crane's help, the Titans are able to track down the figure to an abandoned munitions building. Dick engages in a fight with the figure, who is revealed to be a still-alive Jason, who identifies himself as Red Hood before escaping.
I think I got a taste for just how hardcore the show was when Red Hood threw that dude's head on the table. I was like, oh, this is TVMA.
I mean, that's from the comics. That's been from the animated adaptations. They've all done that. It is pretty brutal.
It does hit different in live action, though, for sure.
That's true. That's very true. What did you think of Scarecrow being like a total pothead stoner?
I'm trying to figure out why they made that choice. I don't know if they were trying to be funny with some kind of correlation between a scarecrow being stuffed with grass and smoking grass. I don't know. I guess
There
that
it
works.
is.
But he talked about it a lot, I feel like, in his first few appearances before he just kind of like gave up smoking. I don't know.
Yeah, he was totally chill until he stopped smoking. That's what happens to people, man. In episode 3, titled Hank and Dove, Hank is lured into a trap by Jason, who implants an explosive device in his chest. As Hank's heartbeats bring the device closer to detonating, Jason offers to deactivate it if the Titans steal gold bars being delivered to a bank. Dick, refusing Jason's demand, discovers that the device was created by Bruce. Using the device's schematics, Dick gives Connor the task of creating a deactivator. However, Dawn, having rekindled her relationship with Hank, steals the gold bars. Dawn and Jason meet at a secluded location where Jason coerces her into saving Hank by shooting him with a gun he provides. Dawn pulls the trigger, but the gun instead detonates the device as Connor arrives too late to use his deactivator. Such a great episode. I loved this episode. Really powerful stuff.
This was a fantastic episode, yeah. This was the episode where I kind of realized, like, whoa, this is turning out to be a lot better than I thought it was going to be. The tale of Hank and, saying goodbye to the Titans and everything like that. I mean, on one hand, he fell into this trap kind of stupidly.
Yeah.
But the fact that he did die, the fact that it had such an impact on the Titans was something that was really tragic.
Yeah, Hank's character has always been pretty brash, and he'll just go off and do whatever he wants. So it wasn't surprising that he did something as foolish as fall into this trap. But I gotta say, I totally thought he was coming out of it.
So
did
did
not
I.
think he was gonna die.
Up until the last minute, I was like, oh, Superboy's got this. And then the fact that the trigger turned out to be the detonator, the trigger of the gun. Oh, man. Red Hood is an evil fucking bastard.
That was next level evil. Holy crap. Poor Don. Poor Don! Episode 4 was titled Blackfire. In the aftermath of Hank's death, Don leaves the Titans. Crane is removed from Arkham after Jason orders his assassination, but Dick abducts him during his transfer to a new prison. Taking Crane to the cabin where he trained, Dick reveals that he knows Crane manipulated Jason into becoming Red Hood. Dick, recognizing that Jason will attempt to rescue Crane, lures him to the cabin for a confrontation. A fight ensues that ends with Jason and Crane's escape. Meanwhile, Corey's visions lead Gar and her to Blackfire, in custody at a government facility run by Dr. Artie Kind. Unable to abandon her sister, Corey frees Blackfire, who accompanies her back to Wayne Manor. This was actually a decent episode.
I actually think it's my favorite episode of the entire season.
Really?
Yeah, it had a lot of emotion considering they were still reeling from what happened to Hank. The pretty cool heist plot involving Nightwing kidnapping the villain. The whole standoff between Nightwing and Red Hood in the woods at the end. I thought it all came together pretty well.
Yeah, I love the fact that Nightwing was smart enough to figure out the fact that Red Hood was working for Scarecrow. I mean, by that point, we had all figured it out, and I always hate it when characters in television or movies aren't smart enough to put two and two together like the audience does. One thing that always bugs me about the show, though, is that freaking everybody knows Bruce Wayne's secret identity.
I was just about to say that. I was literally just about to say that. When Nightwing took Scarecrow to the cabin and was talking about how that's where he and Jason were trained and everything like that, and Scarecrow seemed to understand that he was actually Nightwing, I was like, wait a second. Scarecrow knows everything. Why doesn't he just go to the media with the fact that Bruce Wayne is Batman?
Exactly. And then at the end of the show, when he's caught, why didn't he tell everybody?
Yeah, it made no sense.
But it's not just Scarecrow that knows. It's all of the Titans members. It's all of their friends. It's just freaking everybody. Episode 5, titled Lazarus. This is probably my favorite episode, personally. We flash back 3 months, and Jason is having nightmares of an ominous warning from Donna. Bruce responds by placing Jason under therapy from Leslie Tompkins, a former colleague of Crane. When Jason learns that Bruce intends to remove him as Robin, he begins helping Crane in exchange for a drug that will eliminate his fear. After Crane manipulates Jason into being killed by the Joker, he has Jason resurrected with a Lazarus pit and creates a toxin to control him as Red Hood. Jason uses his new identity to help his friend Molly Jensen rescue missing orphan children, despite Molly recognizing his personality change. In the present, Crane tells Jason of his plan to take over Gotham by engulfing the city in a fear that only they can control. And I really liked the way they used Scarecrow as sort of like a drug pusher, as someone who's going to manipulate not only Jason, but all of Gotham through a drug that he provides, because he is sort of like the pharmaceutical Batman villain.
Yeah, it totally made sense. I thought the scene between Jason Todd and Bruce Wayne when Bruce tells him that he doesn't want him to be Robin anymore was really heartbreaking.
It was heartbreaking. It was such a powerful scene. Bruce saying, I don't want you to be Robin because essentially I care about you and I care about these troubles you're going through, you know? Episode 6 is titled Lady Vic. 6 years before the present, a romantically involved Dick and Barbara engage in a series of museum heists. The robberies lead them to battling an assassin named Lady Vic, where they inadvertently cause the death of her partner. In the present, Crane has Lady Vic steal a medical device that will rapidly distribute his drug. Jason circumvents Crane's authority by giving the drug to street criminals, resulting in a wave of violence. Barbara survives an attack from Lady Vic, but Lady Vic succeeds in obtaining a picture of her for Crane. Despite mounting tensions between her and Corey, Blackfire assists the Titans by uncovering that Crane is working with Gotham's mob bosses. This was probably my least favorite episode.
Yeah, I feel like there were quite a few dropped plot threads here. Like, where the hell did Lady Vic go? What was the point of taking Barbara Gordon's picture or whatever she did? Like, if you're going to take somebody's picture, why don't you just stab him in the face? Like, her goal was to kill Barbara Gordon. Now, she couldn't because Barbara Gordon is a badass. I thought the fight choreography in her wheelchair was actually really well done. It was believable that she would be able to protect herself while in that wheelchair. But the whole Lady Vic thing just left me with a big question mark. I thought she was going to show up again later in the season.
Yeah, exactly. Like Scarecrow was, almost threatening Red Hood by saying you're replaceable. But when your replacement vanishes, I don't know how credible that is. I think she took the photo of Barbara's face in order to get her eye imprint so that Crane could access Oracle, but that's never made clear. And I think the science is pretty sketchy whether or not you could use a photo of someone to use in a retinal scanner. It would have been nice if they clarified some of that. So we've talked a little bit about this, but what do you think of Barbara's justification for stealing jewelry and art just to keep her father on his toes?
I think it's out of character for both Barbara Gordon and Dick Grayson to do that. Like, I thought they were just breaking in and not actually stealing anything or giving the stolen goods back, but it seemed like they were holding on to them, which, doesn't seem right.
No, not at all. Episode 7 was titled 51%. Now, recognizing that Jason still fears Dick, Crane has him drugged. Dick convinces Barbara to find Crane with the computer Oracle, but Barbara deactivates it when Crane hacks into the system. Corey and Blackfire visit mob boss Valeska Knox, who offers to give up Crane's location if they reunite her with her son Michael. However, when Valeska shoots Michael for being an FBI informant, Corey retaliates by killing her. Nevertheless, Corey and Blackfire help Dick locate Crane's drug plant through interrogating one of Valeska's henchmen. The Titans destroy the facility, forcing Crane to flee with Jason. In the aftermath, Dick and Barbara resume their relationship. Seeking to help Jason, Gar tracks down Molly. Blackfire informs Corey that she killed their parents in self-defense.
The whole side plot with the mob boss killing her son and then Starfire killing her back, I thought was crazy.
Yeah, that was pretty shocking. I did not see that coming, honestly. Not only the mobster killing her son, but also Starfire killing the mob boss lady. I mean, all of the Titans are pretty much guilty of murder, just from prior episodes and prior seasons. But we hadn't seen it in a while with these characters. So I was pretty surprised.
It's just the type of world that this show exists in,
I do like the way she did it, though. She was like, I'm a queen, bitch. I was actually really surprised when they destroyed Crane's entire facility. I was like, well, where the hell does the show go now? I thought this was going to be the climax. But it was another one of those moments where you got to see all of the Titans in action using their powers. It was neat.
Yeah, I almost kind of think that this should have been the climax. Everything involving Crane's plot from here on out was less interesting to me.
Also, I think this episode had the perfect opportunity for Gar to turn into a wolf or a drug sniffing dog to find Jason's secret stash or whatever. Missed opportunity, I feel. Episode 8 was titled Home. After Connor and Blackfire do the hibbity-dibbity, they attempt to help Corey with new visions she begins experiencing. Without drugs to keep him under control, Jason turns against Crane. Tim, having deduced Dick's secret identity, arrives at Wayne Manor in an unsuccessful attempt to become the next Robin. A remorseful Jason contacts Dick to surrender himself and Crane while Crane secretly overhears their conversation. Tim also follows Jason, but is shot outside the pumping station by Crane. While the rest of the team tends to Tim, Dick and Corey pursue Jason and Crane in the facility. Crane tricks Corey into attacking him with her powers, causing an explosion that allows his toxin to enter Gotham's water system. I did think it was funny when Crane learned that he was trying to drill through 10 feet of steel with a concrete driller.
That was funny. As soon as I started talking about putting the drug into the water supply, though, I was like, they're ripping off Batman Begins wholesale here.
I thought the same thing, yeah.
I didn't know if that's like a cool homage or just laziness. I don't know.
Both, maybe? I mean, it was being done for the same purposes, right? Just essentially to cause chaos throughout Gotham. I guess you could say it does kind of play upon the whole multiversal aspect of all the DC shows and movies, and that maybe the same things can happen in different ways with the same characters.
That's true. Yeah, I can see that. That just sounds like an excuse to be lazy too, though.
It kind of does. Next thing you know, fucking Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy are going to team up in the next season. I was shocked when Tim got shot.
I wasn't.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, dude's not ready for prime time. Of course he's going to get shot. I'd be surprised if he doesn't get shot again.
He probably will, but he'll be wearing armor this time, you know? I just didn't think that they were going to kill off a character that they had just introduced. I thought it was surprising. But it led into a great episode, episode 9, which was titled Souls. Now, training with the Amazons in Themyscira, Rachel's efforts to resurrect Donna prove unsuccessful. Tim awakens in the afterlife, where he encounters Donna and Hank. Banding together against demonic ghouls that steal dead souls, Hank leads the group to a bridge rumored to revive the deceased. Hank is forced to stay behind during a battle with the ghouls when the bridge collapses, but Donna and Tim successfully cross through the bridge to escape the afterlife. As she's departing, Rachel discovers Donna's body is gone, and Donna saves Bruce from a suicide attempt. Hank reunites with Dawn, prompting them to team up in protecting other souls from the ghouls. Now, I have no idea how Donna knew what Bruce was doing and where he was to save him from his suicide attempt.
Yeah, that was another dangling plot thread. I was wondering why, if Tim couldn't make the jump across the bridge and he was rescued by Donna using her lasso, why couldn't Donna just use her lasso to yank Hank over the bridge gap as well?
I was thinking the same thing.
I thought it was a cool scene, though. I kind of thought it would have been cool, since they were like wishing up weapons to fight with and everything like that, if they would have just miraculously conjured their Titans outfits and then suddenly have been fighting on the bridge as their superhero personas.
That would have been cool. Like, Tim has such a desire to be Robin. You think we could have at least seen him in the Robin outfit once, even if it was in black and white during this season.
As a fantasy, yeah. I think that would have been great. But overall, it was a touching episode. It was a heartfelt episode. It really explored why these characters are heroes and their desire to help others.
Episode 10 was titled Troubled Water. Crane manipulates Gotham's citizens against the Titans through a video that frames Dick and his team for the toxin outbreak, while also presenting Red Hood as the city's new hero. To help the police maintain the trust of the public, Dick has the team turn themselves in. However, they are attacked at the station by corrupt officers under the command of Fletcher, who received a bribe from Jason. The team escapes, but Barbara is arrested for shooting Fletcher to save Dick. With the Titans separated and forced into hiding, Crane and Jason take residence in Wayne Manor. Attempting to heal her sister's injuries from the attack, Corey has her powers absorbed by Blackfire. Gar reunites with a newly arrived Rachel, and Donna also arrives in Gotham after the Amazons test her leadership abilities.
This episode did nothing for me. I think this was the episode that really started souring me on the whole season.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't think this was that bad.
Prior to this, everything was good. This episode just did not live up to the same quality.
I liked the video that Crane played for everyone because it kind of cemented his plan that he wanted to make Red Hood the savior of the city. Prior to this, after Jason stole a little bit of his drug and put it on the street, I was wondering why Crane still had Jason around. But this was the reason.
It just makes no sense to me why the people of Gotham would trust this video made by Scarecrow.
They didn't know it was made by Scarecrow. It's not like at the end it was like, this video was made and distributed by Scarecrow.
But like they were so quick to turn on the Titans. Why? Just because they were told by some creepy ass dude's voice in this random ass video?
Yeah, I think people have shown to be pretty easily manipulated. Batman's gone. Things are going wrong. Gotta believe in something.
I guess. I thought the only interesting thing that happened to this episode was when Starfire lost her powers. I was like, oh, what's happening here? And then, we learned in the next episode.
Yeah, that was surprising. Blackfire has never had Starfire's powers, so that was an interesting twist, definitely. I thought the shootout in the police station was pretty interesting. It was another moment where the Titans, all get to display their powers and fight as a team. You didn't think that was cool?
No, I was like, what the hell's going on here? Like, all the cops in Gotham City are susceptible to this bribe. All these cops want to see the downfall of their own city. I don't know, man. Gotham's
a pretty corrupt place. Episode 11 is titled The Call is Coming from Inside the House, which was a strange title. But during the episode, Dick accepts a challenge to face Jason in public. The confrontation sees Dick emerge victorious, but a crowd of bystanders attacks him. Jason retreats to Wayne Manor, where he discovers Crane has turned violent from a psychotic break. Instigated by information that Gar uncovered, Rachel finds the Lazarus Pit before her powers alert her of Dick being in danger. A reunited Donna and Tim learn that Crane is plotting to have corrupt officers assault Tim's city block, prompting Donna to lead the residents in fighting back. After being shot, Corey experiences a vision that reveals her parents had Blackfire's powers transferred into her as a baby. Corey emerges from the vision with a new ability to generate blue light.
This was another weird episode. I want to know why Scarecrow was having the GCPD attack its own citizens. That didn't make any sense to me.
Because apparently he could afford it with all those gold bars.
But he was planning on destroying the city with his fear toxin bombs anyway. I don't know. And the whole blue light thing with Starfire going up to that woman and her child and then like figuring out that she was never supposed to have the Starfire power and then she got this new power. It was all so vague and so like strange. It was strange.
I agree. I didn't like that either. I did think it was pretty messed up when Dick freaking blew kryptonite powder into Superboy's face.
Yeah, what the fuck?
It made no sense.
Right. Like he could have just said, I need to do this on my own, but Dick had to be a dick about it.
And I don't even know why he had to do it alone. There was no reason. Part of this whole series is all about family and not having to do things on your own. And I feel like certain characters have to keep relearning this lesson because they're always trying to do things on their own when they just learn later on that they really don't need to.
Yeah, like I said, like episode 10, it all started just going downhill.
I do always think it's kind of funny whenever like they need Gar just to like quickly go through like a subplot for them. All of a sudden he's researching like Lazarus Pit books just for no random reason. Everyone else is getting fucking shot and dying and stuff. And he's in the Batcave just brushing up on random obscure knowledge.
That'll conveniently save the day.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
I did think it was weird that Tim's family, they were like all okay with the cousin who had access to like assault weapons and stuff like that. Like, he's just, that cousin in the family. Every family has one.
That was so bizarre. Like, I was like, where the hell did this kid come from?
And he was like talking about like all these contacts he had that we never saw or anything like that. And Tim's father is like a retired cop. You think he would be super pissed.
Yeah, that cousin was the biggest instance of telling without showing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I also thought it was weird at the end of this episode when like his family decided to switch gears and give Tim their blessing just because they saw him karate kick a dude, Like everyone in this show is inconsistent from 1 minute to the next in how they feel. Biggest bunch of wishy-washy people I've ever seen.
I think Gotham just attracts a certain crowd, I mean,
it's not just them, but like everybody from Nightwing to Red Hood to Superboy, all of them keep changing their mind. Can't decide what the hell they want to do.
I want to argue against it. I can't. Episode 12 was called Prodigal. Now, a dying Dick is brought to the Lazarus Pit by Gar after he takes the form of a bat. Dick emerges from the pit fully healed, inspired by visions of his father and future daughter. Learning that Crane plans on killing the city's entire population, Jason teams up with Dick, but they are unable to prevent Crane from obtaining explosives containing his toxin. Donna leads Tim and his family out of Gotham despite Tim's insistence on helping protect the city. After escaping her holding cell, Barbara attempts to reactivate Oracle. Blackfire arrives at Kind's facility with Connor, where she discovers her ship is being held. When Corey informs her of their parents' actions, Blackfire decides to return to Tamaran, but Connor's romantic feelings for her cause him to destroy the ship.
That was a surprise, but again, another instance of a character on the show being inconsistent in their actions. Later on, he was like, oh, by the way, I'll help you build your ship now. It's so weird.
Well, he had to learn a lesson. He was going to be selfish, but then he was like, oh, I shouldn't be selfish.
I guess, yeah.
I really hope after this Lazarus Pit episode that Dick's weird visions are gone, because I'm getting kind of tired of them.
Why did he turn into the Joker? That I can't understand. It's because he secretly resented Jason Todd or something, and so he became the figure that killed him in real life? It's kind of strange.
I guess.
Why do you think the bats saved Nightwing? It almost seemed like there was something mystical about it.
I don't know. Was it like Raven who caused that? Was it Gar who caused that?
They just needed it to happen, so, they wrote it in.
So it happened,
That's
yeah.
why.
Like, you know what would be really cool? Some fucking bats lifted him to the Lazarus Pit. I mean, couldn't Raven just, teleport them? No, dude, fucking bats. In the final episode, episode 13, which was titled Purple Rain, Argus agents, led by V, rescue Barbara. Joined by Tim, the Titans reunite. After detonating one explosive, Crane threatens to set off the other bombs if the heroes are unable to solve his clues. And I'm like, what the fuck is he, the Riddler?
Right?
It's like Scarecrow doesn't do that. Dick instead directly attacks Wayne Manor with Gar, Jason, and Tim, who help deactivate the explosives and capture Crane. The remaining Titans turn the Lazarus Pit into rainfall that resurrects those killed by the first bomb. Bruce returns to Gotham, where Jason makes amends with him before departing. Connor helps design a new ship for Blackfire, who bids farewell to him and Corey. Leaving the team to find Dawn, Donna is asked to join Argus. Tim accompanies the Titans as they return to San Francisco in an RV. Before leaving, Rachel destroys Crane's sanity with the pit's dark magic.
I thought it was a little strange at the beginning of this episode because this is the first time that the entire Titans team is together. Like, Donna is back with them and everything like that. And they didn't really address anything about this reunion. For the last 2 episodes, the entire team was scattered and all of a sudden they're in the same room and nobody's like, oh, Donna, you're back, you're alive. And Superboy was there even though Nightwing had just attacked him. And yeah, they addressed that kind of later on in the episode, but it was a little bit too little too late in my opinion. We could have used a reunion scene.
For sure. It did feel like there was a scene missing. Absolutely. I definitely got whiplash when the scene started.
I did think it was a novel idea that they wouldn't play Scarecrow's games and just break into Wayne Manor and hack his computer so that he couldn't set them off.
Yeah, I like that more proactive approach. Usually superheroes are reacting to villains, but in this case, they went proactive. I did think that the plan that they had to create a Lazarus Pit storm was bullshit.
I don't quite understand how it happened. Superboy's like, we're going to create a storm. And he drew a diagram and they're like, yeah, I know, that's what we're going to do. And he's like, yeah, and I put it up on the board. And so they go to the pit. And then I guess I wasn't quite sure what Raven was actually doing to the pit until the very last scene of the show. I guess she was pulling out all the dark magic.
Right.
But at the moment I was like, what the fuck is she doing? And then I think Blackfire evaporated the pit into a force field created by Starfire. It wasn't quite clear, but then they just shot it up into the air and Superboy froze the clouds, creating rainfall.
Exactly. They couldn't film a scene of Superboy flying up in the sky. He had to freeze it from the ground.
And then it started creating lightning. So Donna Troy got her lasso hard and erect and stuck it up into the clouds to use as a lightning rod. And then the lightning just stopped or something. It was so bizarre.
But it created purple rain, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I do like the idea of the Lazarus Pit storm because not only does it get rid of the Lazarus Pit in Gotham City as a plot device, because you don't want to use resurrection over and over again, but it's also a way to use the Lazarus Pit that I've never seen before.
I think they went a little bit haywire with the Lazarus Pit because it's supposed to resurrect you, but also make you insane. So they probably just made matters worse in Gotham. It just made everyone who died insane when they come back to life. Though I guess that really wasn't a factor in this series so far. For all we know, in the next season, Dick's going to continue to have his hallucination moments, and it's just going to be blamed on the Lazarus Pit. I guarantee you that's going to happen.
Well, I mean, if that happens, Raven can always just pull the black magic out of Dick.
I think there's a joke there somewhere. I'm not going to say it. But I mean, once all was said and done, I actually really liked the ending to this season. I think it set up some really interesting new directions for each of the characters. You know, if Starfire happens to be pregnant, if Donna's going to join Argus, I'm sure Dick is going to be training Tim, and that's cool. Gar and Raven are back together. It makes me really look forward to season 4. especially since, as I mentioned, the show just keeps getting better and better from season to season.
Yeah, the episode ended well. I do think that the way Scarecrow was defeated was a little bit anticlimactic by getting punched in the face by Tim, but I do like how they kind of revisited him again in Arkham Asylum to instill all of that pit dark magic in him.
Yeah, it's a good way to kind of tie up the loose end that Crane knows who Bruce Wayne is, I think.
Yeah. I was like, he can't go down this easy, and they made sure that he didn't, so.
This season wasn't perfect by any means, it's definitely not like at the same level as like Netflix's Daredevil shows or anything like that, but it still has some really great moments, some really strong emotional episodes that I love. And for that, I'm giving it 3.5 stars.
Yeah, I was kind of waffling in between 3 stars and 3.5 stars. Now that we've been talking about this season, though, it does remind me that from episodes 1 through 9, I was really enjoying this show. 10, 11, and 12 kind of lost me a little bit, but 13 actually was a great end to the season. So I'd have to agree. I think 3.5 stars is pretty good, especially considering that this is the best season of the entire series. Like the previous seasons, I'm imagining wouldn't be rated as high.
No, they wouldn't be. And who knows, maybe someday we'll get around to reviewing those. It depends on, what we could squeeze into the calendar.
But that does it for this review. Let us know what you guys thought about the show by writing to us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com or by visiting us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. You can find links to all of our accounts by checking out our show notes or visiting our website, dynamicduel.com.
And on our site, you could also find a link to our Patreon page, where we offer bonus content, including bonus episodes and duels, monthly live movie watch-alongs, collectible pin sets, and access to our Discord server. Check it out right after this episode. Our lowest tier is only $2 a month.
Which is also the cost to subscribe to the show on Spotify. Subscribe now to access over 200 archived episodes of this podcast. In our next episode, it's going to be another review. It'll be our 4th review in a row, but this is the week that Eternals comes out to theaters. So we're going to see that, and we're going to talk all about it next Tuesday.
But that does it for this episode. We want to give a big thanks to our executive producers, John Speas, Ken Johnson, Jace Crump, John Starosky, Zachary Hepburn, John Bechinina, Mitchell Phipps, Stephen Lovato, Dustyn Balcom, Salvador Hernandez-Contreras Jr., and Levi Yeaton for helping make this podcast possible. And we'll talk to you guys next week. Up and away.
True believers,